I scaled an AI product to 50K per month without sales calls, and it only required one group call per week. Instead of building an AI automation agency that traps you into selling your time for money, I'll show you the exact system I use to build a product that actually scales. I'll give you the complete system, the sales funnel, how I got testimonials, onboarding, the course itself, the automations, everything, plus the 3 stages of growth that got me here and the 4 limiting beliefs that almost killed my business. If you don't want to trade your time for money, this video is for you. All right, let's go ahead and get started with the funnel. I'm going to show you how you capture customers online from social media. I'm going to show you the process, the sales page, everything. I'm also going to talk about several critical mistakes here. So here I'm showing you the final funnel that I was using to sell my 5K offer. And again, what the funnel is it's just after somebody sees you, how do you convert them into a customer? So as we know, there's lots of different ways to get in touch with people online. The primary way that I used is content. We've got TikTok and YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels, all of our short form content. And then we've got YouTube for our long form content. And then of course, you've got online communities. So I was on School, so people can discover you here as well. But the common thread here is that on each of these different platforms, you have a link that you can use so that once somebody sees your content, they can click that link and they can start to go through your funnel to become a customer. So now the most important thing about this link, and this is where people start to make a mistake, is you really want to get them focused on one thing. One thing I see a lot is they send someone to a link tree where they offer them all these different things. You can book a call, you can get a free PDF, you can do this, you can do that. And what ends up happening is that when somebody comes to this page, they just don't really know what to do. It takes a lot of time to digest all of these different options. So you want to send them to one specific thing. And instead of trying to spread all of the value that you're creating across multiple objects, you want to try to make one valuable thing that just blows people away so that they'll actually go through the process and click through to it. So now what I did was I sent them to a form, and it was a simple form on a platform called Typeform. So here we're seeing the mobile view. If they were on desktop, they would see this. What I liked about Typeform is just very simple. It's clean. There's no way to click away. They saw my social media page where you can also explain what the link does. So most platforms will give you one sentence. So this one sentence says, hey, if you want a free content system plus a free training, then click the link below. And then as soon as they get to this form, I reinforce that and I make it really simple. It says, what's your name plus email? And then I call out, we'll email you a free automated content system, plus we'll redirect you to the free training. So I'm being very clear about what's going to happen. I ask for the first name. I don't even ask for the last name. I'm trying to reduce as many things that I ask them as possible. And I ask for their email. They can submit it. And if they do, it redirects them to the training just like I said it would. So here's what's happening. First and foremost, right after they give me their name and email, they are redirected to a page, which is a training. And that training looked very simple. I had a couple of different iterations of it. I reinforced that free automated system should arrive in their email in 5 to 10 minutes. And I told them to watch the training. And then there was a video here. And it was really just a YouTube video that I had produced that demonstrated the product. And then from here, if they were to click on this button, it would take them to the sales page, and we'll go over that in just a few minutes. And then down below this button here, I had some social proof, some testimonials, and then another link to that sales training. So you can see what's happening here is that right away, they get pushed right into the system. They can actually watch the training, and the training is actually introducing them to the product. And then the buttons actually take them directly to the sales page. Now, behind the scenes, what's happening is we also are adding them to our email list. And I'm also inviting them into my school where the free resource is. So there's a really tiny content system in here, not at all like the one that I am selling, but it's a free one that I promised to give them. So this form is very powerful. It gets them into the training, to the sales page, gets them onto my email list, and gets them into my school as well. And they have to go into school to get the free content system. And then the first email in this sequence is just reminding them about this. So it tells them, hey, make sure you check the school invite out, make sure you get in there. And then it gives them a link to that free training. So once they have it, they're good to go. And then from there, all this email list does is it sends them my YouTube video. So every time I make a new YouTube video, I would add it to the list here. That's the way I could keep them engaged if they didn't go through this process here. So every time I make a new YouTube video, I just add a new email to my sequence. And then I would vary the call to action in these different emails here. Some of them had no call to action just so I wasn't annoying them too much. Some of them would reference back to the free content system. Some of them would reference the sales page. Some of them would reference the training. It was just a way to reintroduce them to this ecosystem here. And then as well, even though this system was set up so that they didn't have to book a sales call, it would also give them the opportunity to book a sales call if they really need to. Because even though I sold a lot of these products, the 5K product without a sales call, there were definitely some people that wanted to talk before they spent that kind of money. And so that's how I introduced a potential sales call through these different emails here. There are not a lot of different ways that people can go. They follow a very simple pattern. They fill out the form, they go to a page where they learn more about it, and then they can go to the sales page. That's it. And then they get on the list where I can continue to nurture them. And then if they get into the school community, even better, we can develop a relationship there. Because one of the things that I noticed that people do is that they just make things too complicated. They might send somebody to a website with all of this information that really just confuses people. And don't underestimate how much work a website really is, because the thing is, people say, oh, I can just spin it up here. It's going to take me just a few minutes. But the thing is, especially when you're first starting out, when you build a website, you're guessing a lot about what you're going to put on that website. And if anything changes, what you're going to find is that you just go through this cycle of changing things and having to come back and update this website. And it just starts to eat up tens and tens of hours of your time. And then it just wastes all that time instead of creating new YouTube videos that could be in your sequence or improving the product, getting testimonials, reaching out to people, and closing deals. When you think of your funnel, you want to think of it as a pipe, okay? This is where people find you, and then this is where people pay you money. Every time you have a question, a form, a redirect, something else for them to do, you're creating a junction point. And when you have a pipe and you have multiple junctions going all different places, each one of these junctions is a place where you can leak customers. So you want to remove as many junction points as possible. And in fact, later on down here, when I talk about the 3 stages, I'm going to show you how you can limit this even more when you're first starting out. All right, now let me show you this automation here that is triggered when they actually send the form that kicks off this entire process right here. It's a lot more simple than you think. And there are some things that you don't really have to have when you get started, but I'll cover everything. So first and foremost, when they submit the form, this is triggered here. And then I have a quick check to make sure that they're giving me a valid email. Otherwise, all of this is really just wasting my time. And strategically, one of the things I did here was I offered 2 things: a free automated content system and a training. So I made it clear that I really needed their email because I was going to email them this automated content system, as opposed to trying to get their name and email just to show them the training. So from here, it goes down 3 different paths. Here we add them to my email list and we add them to a list. And again, this is a predefined list where the first one is simply making sure they got their free resource. And then it gives them a bunch of emails with continued calls to action. We also send it a message to our team in Slack that a new lead came through. And then this automation here is simply using the school API to send an invite to their email. And then I also have another path here that adds them to my CRM so we can track them through an actual sales process. So they click on the form, get the training, and then if they click through to the sales page, they come here. So now let me walk through this sales page and just explain how I built it out and the thinking behind different pieces of it, because I'm trying to sell them a $5,000 automated content system that they can purchase right here. So first and foremost, you got the headline, and I tried to come up with something that was compelling, something that was different. And I used specific numbers to make it more clear about the outcome that they would come through, because a lot of people are trying to increase the amount of content that they create. They want to create images, videos, and text posts, and they want to be able to distribute them everywhere. So I came up with a nice, short, consistent, and specific headline. And then this section here is pretty much trying to boost credibility while also trying to explain further about what the system does, because this system does a lot of things. So it's going to take a little bit of time for me to describe all the things that it can do. So first and foremost, I wanted to articulate the outcome and really start to lay in these different testimonials. And I picked this testimonial first because it has the most credibility. It's the podcast producer for Guy Raz and NPR and a bunch of other high profile podcasts. And then you'll notice here that on top of the video, I put a banner that took a quote from the testimonial just to help articulate one of the most powerful things that they said in the testimonial so that they actually click it. And then if you're interested, the platform I'm using to run this is called Thrivecart. I really like the platform. It does allow you to create all of these landing pages. The only downside is that they charge a one-time fee to get access to the software. It's $4.99, but it's lifetime. Plus, they don't try to take a percentage of your sales or anything like that. It's just a straight integration with Stripe. So it easily pays for itself, but you do have to bite the bullet and that upfront cost. So then in this next section here, what I really tried to articulate and paint a picture of was being able to do what Gary Vee does. So if you know Gary Vee and I show you this, you immediately start to understand that I'm going to help you scale like Gary Vee. And then I talk a bit about the struggle, right? Because Gary and Alex Hormozi, they have huge teams that allow them to scale. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you this plug and play system that can allow you to scale to their distribution levels, but at a fraction of the price. And then I talk a little bit about the big mistake that a lot of people are making, which is using Notion or ClickUp or Monday.com to scale content. I touch on the fact that those are project management softwares and they're not designed to scale content like the system is. This is a plug and play system specifically for content. It's not just a general software for managing a project. And then after that, I go right back into more testimonials. So building that credibility, right? So start off with credibility, explain, paint a picture, talk about how it's different, and then more testimonials that people can watch. And again, I'm always putting these little titles here on top of the video so that people can see a quote inside that video. And then it's only here where I actually introduce the system. I start explaining exactly what it is, the name of it. I give a video of the system. So this is a different video that was on the training, but it just shows something that's really cool that this system can do. I start to introduce some buttons that would allow them to click down to the sales page. I don't do that too early because there's a lot to consume here. Then I describe a bit about myself, credibility, how I'm a tech guy, produced a lot of content myself. This is how I've grown my business. And then again, we have more testimonials, and I'll explain how I got all of these different testimonials in just a second. And then here's where I go into just a lot of detail of the system, trying to give people that aren't going to watch the videos to see it visually, which is really the best way to sell this, giving those people a way to read exactly what it does. And for all of these different pieces of text here, all I really did was jump into ChatGPT and explain what it did. And I had it write all of these different paragraphs, trying to be as specific as possible, not using jargon or any different thing, just trying to explain very carefully what the system did and the main different pieces of it. So content planning, organization, production, team management, artificial intelligence, really all of the things that people had a problem with and why they would want a system like this. Then again, throwing in more testimonials. So there's this constant back and forth between information and social proof, information and social proof, right? Just on and on and on. That way they're just getting bombarded with good testimonials and proof that this actually works. And then I get into what you actually get in the system. We got 4 simple sections here: the automated system, video instruction, 12 weeks of support, and guidelines and SOPs. And then I explain that there's a specific process that they go through. So this is where I even give them a picture into the course so they can see how organized it is. But I was very specific on what's going to happen, because this is all the stuff that people start to ask themselves and why they want a sales call. People want to know, if I purchase, what's going to happen? You're going to get an email invitation into the course. You're going to get into the Slack program. The course is going to walk you through a certification process to understand the system. Then once you do that, we're going to develop a personalized plan. Then we're going to talk about how you onboard your team. And then beyond that, we're going to help you personalize and customize the system for you. And then I made sure it's clear that they're going to get personalized support from me. I show some visuals of the weekly Q&A call so they can see people actually interacting with me and how that process looks like. What you're trying to do is paint a picture for people so that this isn't just something imaginary. What is it actually going to look like once they are inside your program? And then again, more testimonials. And then I go right into the sales page so people can fill this out. If they want to add the done for you install, they can add that. Goes to $5,000. And then below that, we have the FAQ. And this is where I just would answer a lot of the common questions that would come up in sales calls when I was doing those primarily as the main way. And that way, if people aren't quite convinced yet, they can go through all of this. And if they do have questions, they can email, but I don't let them book a call from here. Or if they just decide not to buy, then down the line, when they get more and more videos showing them the system and how it works and different cool videos, then they'll be able to either, again, come back to the sales page and just purchase, or they can actually book a sales call with me. So now the trick that I used to get all these testimonials was to offer a month of extra support. So I had a lot of happy customers, but what would happen is at the end of the 3 months, people would reach out and say, hey, everything's going well. I have an additional question, but they were beyond the 3 months. So what I would say is, hey, no problem. Would love to help you out. Hey, what if I gave you a free month in exchange for a video testimonial? And it gave them just a little bit of extra value to get them to take that extra step and record that video. And it's all these videos that people see throughout this page that really strengthen the product's credibility. All right, so now let's talk about the onboarding process. What does it look like after they're on this sales page and they complete an order? So I had originally set this up on Zapier. You obviously don't need to use Zapier for this, but this is what I originally set it up on and it worked fine, so I never changed it. But what happens is after a product is purchased, I go into my CRM and we update the status of the lead to purchased. We send them an email conversation directly from my email. This step here does a little bit of formatting from some of the information here so that I can send them the program agreement, and I use a platform called Signwell. And by the way, if you want access to this program agreement and all of these automations in Zapier and Make that pull all of this stuff together, make sure to jump into the No Code Architects community. You'll find everything that you see here in this video in the classroom. I'll even give you behind the scenes access to the way that the school site is set up so that you can browse it and see how to build your own. Then I add a tag inside of my email platform so that I know that they have purchased this product. And then I also added them to an Airtable system that was just there to keep track of their onboarding process. So now what happens next is they get this program agreement. I don't actually give them access to the course until they've signed that program agreement. So they're going to see this program agreement. It goes over all of the things that they're going to get. And one of the things that's important in this agreement is that I ask them not to resell this platform, to copy it, or to turn it into a SaaS platform. Because you really don't want anybody taking your course and all this technology you built and just reselling it. Asks them not to share anything. It has the payment terms, everything. Now, as soon as they sign it, the rest of the process is triggered. There's a few automations here that are just formatting text so that we can use those in these steps here. We send them a confirmation email, just letting them know how to access the course. And then we use the Schools app here to actually unlock the course for the member. So I think as of this moment right now, this particular automation to unlock a course through automation in school is currently only offered in Zapier. All right, so now let's actually go inside the course, and I'm going to walk through how I set this up and how I get people started quickly and make it as easy for them as possible. And again, remember what's going to happen here is they're going to get an email from me. So they're going to get one email that just onboards them and tells them all the information. And they're also going to get an email from school, which will unlock the course. So this email here from me also explains this in the most simple language possible to reduce any amount of confusion that someone might have, because you don't want them to be confused. They just spent $5,000. They sign the agreement, they get access, and you want to get them into the program as quickly as possible. And again, if you want the specific language of those emails, jump into the No Code Architects. I'll have all of that in there. So when you first get into the course, I have everything laid out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You want to make sure that everything is as clear as possible in terms of the order. Start here. Self-explanatory. And then what I like to do is the very first video, I like to have a video that really outlines how to be successful in this program. Because by the time I built this latest version, I had worked with a lot of different people. I had seen the different issues that people have. And so I was able to really talk about the benefits of the program, how it's helped me, get them excited about the success that it's possible, and then also talk a bit about where I see people have struggles and to give them some advance notice. I also give them some warnings up front where we're using Airtable. So I told them, hey, don't change any of these columns until you get comfortable with the system and you know how it works so that you don't break anything. What I'm trying to do in this Start Here section is number one, make them excited for purchasing the program so that they don't jump in here and just immediately get disappointed that they just spent $5,000. So I'm reinforcing success and what that looks like. I'm trying to get them going as quickly as I can. I'm trying to give them the most important early warnings and just making sure that they understand how everything works. So if they want customized development, there's a path for that. This was a system where they had to do all of this on their own, but if they really wanted help, there was a way to do that. I also explained how to use the course, the main order to go through, how to track progress, keeping things simple, go slow, just reminding them of all the important things that they might need to know as they go through the course. Then I introduced them to where they can get support, the weekly Q&A call, make sure that they have the Zoom link and they can get into Slack. Then I explain more about how Slack works, the specific channel that they need to go into, how they should submit different requests for help, links to software that might help them as well. So really trying to roll out the red carpet to make things simple and clear for people. And it definitely is a delicate balance here. There are important things you want to give someone, but you also don't want to overload them with so much information where they're starting to get bogged down in just administrative tasks. Because I promise you, when people buy these things, they go through this as fast as they can, which is normal, but not always in their best interest. So then I talk about database updates. So this is Airtable. So from time to time, we did change the database, and I explained how that process would work. And then I did implement this at one point because I found that if somebody didn't have a sales call, which was a large majority of people, I would have them book a 5 to 10 minute call where I could just make sure that they were onboarded correctly, that they knew what to do. And I found that that was a good way to help the success of the users. This is definitely not a requirement, but it was just something that I decided to do. Then I get straight into the actual installation of the system. So the first thing I go through is all of the required accounts. Now, this is an important one because when it comes to no-code automations, there are certain accounts that people have to have. And sometimes, like with Google, for instance, there's personal Gmail accounts, and then there's workspace business accounts, and they work differently. So this was the page where I was trying to be as clear as I could about exactly what they need to have so that they didn't run into problems later. So now this is a page that people often forget. Sometimes people have a tendency not to push their clients to do things because the client might push back. The client might say, well, I don't have a business Google Drive account. Can I just use my Gmail? And it's in those moments where if you show a little bit of weakness and you let them use it, they run into issues later. So I was just very clear with what they actually had to do and made it as simple as possible so that even though they might be a little annoyed that they have to have a certain type of account, a certain Airtable account, at least they knew exactly how to get it. It was as painless as possible because you don't want them to go through this whole process with a Gmail account and then find all these other issues down the line. That's going to be a whole lot more annoying. So with no-code automations, there are some inconveniences to clients when they are setting these things up. So just make sure you're really clear up front so that you minimize that, but make sure that they do the right thing. There's no other way around it. And so I did that by being really clear what not to use, what to do, and then also giving them links to the various systems that they would need. And then anytime I would have a client reach out to me that was confused, I would just take a moment and take screenshots and make sure that the next person wouldn't run into the same thing. So on all of these different platforms, if someone's new to the system like Airtable, they just might not understand certain things about it. So I would just point it out directly with some screenshots and some arrows. And then again, I did make a video just to make sure that people knew not to share my Airtable base, that was important. And then I did have some special instructions. If people purchased the done for you install, it gave them the instructions on what they needed to do. They needed those various accounts and that they should send me all of the usernames and passwords through 1Password as a secure method to get me their credentials. And then I gave them a backup in case they didn't want to go through that trouble. They could send it to me on Slack. But it was important that I gave them the most secure option and then said, hey, if you just don't want to do it, it's going to be less secure, but this is how you go about doing it. And then if they did the done for you install, I told them to stop here until I messaged them in Slack that everything was ready to go. So now this part of the process was actually pretty cool because when it comes to getting access to the Airtable base, which was a template, and also the make automations that would power that template, there's some customizations that have to be done manually, except I solved that with this particular process. So when they click this form, it's going to allow them to request the Airtable base. And this is all automated. So when they come here, they can click on this, they can put in their name, they can put in their email, and that triggers a backend process on our side to clone the database. So we clone them their own version of the database. And this is important because when it comes to automations, and it's a little bit technical and it's hard to understand, but Airtable has unique IDs for their table, for their columns. Everything is unique. So when you clone the database, all of the automations themselves, when you first build them out, they are tied to the Airtable base itself. So the automations I built are tied to my own template. And so when I clone it and give them their own version of it, I actually need to go back into the automations and update the automation and all of these IDs for their version of it. And I created an automation that actually does that for me. And it's really important because when they install these make automations, the only thing that they have to do is go into each of the make automations and change the connection to their connection. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Otherwise, they would have had to go through all of these automations. If I hadn't created this process, they would have had to go through all of the automations and reset them up, which would have been impossible. You would have had to do a done for you install. And even if you were doing the install yourself, it would have been painful for you. And then once they get that template, what this video walks them through is this process here where they have their template here. They can come over here to the tools, extensions, and then there's this onboarding here. And what it does is they put in their name and their email. And what this little script does is it grabs all of the IDs for the Airtable base and all of the columns, and it sends that to me so that I can replace all of those values in the automation with their values so that the automations work right out of the box. And again, if you want access to the code that actually does this, you'll find that inside the no-code architects. And then from there, all of the real complex stuff is done. Again, what I try to do is get all of that complex stuff out of the way. It's no fun for anybody, but you want to be clear and precise. And I got this down pretty well so that people could get this whole thing done in about 30 minutes. And then it just goes into, okay, set up Frame, set up Google Drive. There's a few maintenance things you need to do inside the database. Then here I give them the opportunity to give me access to their accounts. So if I ever need to provide support on a call or in Slack, then I would have access to those things, get that out of the way, and then they're good to go. And now they can go right into the core installation. So now inside here, I would give them the make.com blueprints. All they had to do was import those. And then for each of the little nodes that were inside the automation, and there was only 2 automations that I had to give them. So 2 automations powered the entire process. And all they would have to do when they got into Make was to go into each node, and not every node, but just the ones that had connections like Google Drive, and they would just have to set the connection. That's it. And then they would save it and they'd be done. They didn't have to do anything else. They didn't have to configure it. And that's why we had this process here, because without getting the information for their unique database, we would not have been able to update the make.com blueprints to be customized for their Airtable database. That's why that step was so important, because without that, the install process for them or for you would be really painful. We'd walk them through a few webhooks that they'd have to set up. We would have them go inside of Airtable and turn on specific automations, because when you duplicate a base and you go into these automation here, these are all by default off. So we're just showing people how to come in here and just turn each one of these on. Then we have a module here that just shows them how to test the system and make sure everything is good. And that's really what these 3 modules did here. So again, we were able to get this working so that it only took about 30 minutes to go from nothing to a fully installed KEDB system. Because what you really want to have is the shortest period of time where people understand what they're doing, know how to get support, can set up all of their accounts, and have a working system in the shortest amount of time possible, because they just spent $5,000 and they want to get going as quickly as possible. So shrinking this time down and making it as easy as possible where they don't even have to reach out to you to get through this is the ideal situation that you want for your clients. And of course, it takes a little bit of time to refine it. But what you want to be sure of is that as you hit issues, you aggressively address each one and put it back into the course so that the next person doesn't run into that issue. And when you first get going, you want to be really diligent and give a little bit of extra time to those first users that might get frustrated at certain steps so that you can learn more about what their struggles are, fix it, and then never have to deal with that again. Now, one thing I do want to address before we go too much further, a question I get a lot, which is, should customers set up their own accounts or should you run the accounts for them? I think in general, clients should set up their own accounts with their own credit card. They should set those up and send you the credentials. And again, remember I said that I asked them to send it securely on a platform called 1Password. And the reason why I believe that is because you don't really want to get into the business of managing someone's account, maybe paying for it for them and trying to charge an upcharge on top of that, because the amount of profit that you're really going to make by running the accounts for them is not that much, but then you're going to be responsible for it. So in general, my default answer to that question is always have the client set up their own accounts with their own credit card, and they just give you access either for support or to do the install for them. Now, once they have everything installed, the next thing that they go through is a core certification. So this is just a high-level overview of everything in the system. I walk them through all the different tables and all of the different fields, because as you can see, there's quite a bit going on in this system, and there's quite a few things that they should just be aware of as they get into it. So I go through all of these important tables, and I explain some terminology and how I think about things, and I start to introduce all of those different things to them. And then I actually walk them through some actual workflows. So this is where I have them go through the process and use the system. And one of the important things here, it's not just something that they can watch. They have to go through this and actually send me a screenshot showing me that they accomplished that. I know that they're not just going through the motions, right? You want them to go through it themselves and prove it to you, because a lot of people will just watch the video and they won't really absorb what's going on. Whenever you build out an application in something like Airtable, there's a lot of muscle memory that people need to understand in order to really use the system and adopt it. And it's only after they go through these 2 sections where they understand more about the system that we get into the personal plan building. So this is where we actually walk them through a process and we give them a spreadsheet right here that allows them to fill out their own specific plan. And there's a video on how to actually fill that out, because we don't really want them to start modifying things and getting past things before they even know how to use the system. And I wanted them to understand how to use the system and build a plan before they even tried to onboard their team. You can't onboard people on your team before you know how to use the system yourself. So then we have a whole section on team onboarding and how to use the system. Then a whole other section on extra customizations. Another section here, much further down the path for the complex automations. You'll notice I put all of the complex stuff at the bottom, because what happens is when people buy these automated systems, there's all these cool things that it can do. And they always want to go to the cool stuff first, but without understanding the fundamentals, without having their team, they just get stuck here. So I put this in order, and I was really explicit about not doing any of this until they had all of this completed. And the people that listened to me always did really well. And the people that struggled always jumped right here. And so part of customer success is figuring out how to make sure people don't go here before they do all of the other important things. Then we have a section here just on automated posting. Again, that's at the bottom as well, because the automated posting is very popular, but it's not as important as all of the other items here. So again, we prioritize it that way. And then at the bottom, we have this section here, which is database updates. So whenever I would make a change to the Airtable database, I would have a little video here that would just explain the different changes that I would make. And I would only end up making like 4 or 5 of these. So I would release the system, and then over time, we would make little changes based off of feedback. But then once you get to about 4 or 5 different updates, then I pretty much froze it and I didn't make a whole lot after that. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the 3 stages of growth, because I showed you the final stage. So let's talk about how you're gonna go from stage 1 to stage 2 and then to stage 3, which is what I just discussed. So if you're starting from scratch and you don't have any existing automations, you're just brand new to this, and you're starting to think about how can I build a scalable AI product, going from 0 to a 5K product is gonna be difficult, because there's so much experience that goes into this process. And if you remember, not only was I selling the system itself, but remember, it came with coaching, right? And so that was part of the offer. It wasn't just a technical system. It was also 12 weeks of support. I make a lot of content. So not only could I give you the system, but I could walk you through how to set all this up and put your team in it and scale it, because I had worked with so many different content creators and YouTubers, and I did it myself, that I could actually coach you through this process. And I actually make money from my content, so I have a lot of credibility there. So going from 0 to 5K is going to be difficult. So what I recommend people do is they start off small and they start off simple, okay? And the most simple thing that you can do is to first think about what type of automation are you going to build? And there's usually 3 different ways that you can go about this online. You're either helping people make money, you're either helping people with relationships, or you're helping people with health. So you're going to want to pick one of these. So I did content. So obviously I'm helping people make money. And once you pick one of these, money, relationships, or health, pick one sub niche inside of that, right? So there's lots of different ways of helping people make money. You could help them with sales. You could help them with lead generation. You could help them with closing more deals. And so what I focused in on was content, because I was making a lot of content. I had fun with it. And so I went with something that I enjoyed. So really here in the beginning, what you're going to need to do is just start to think of different automations that you could build around the niche that you picked. You don't have to feel a lot of pressure like you have to nail the perfect product right off the bat. You can come up with a bunch of different ideas, and you want to make them small enough that where you can build them. Generally, what I say is within a week. You don't want to build a project that's going to take you the next 12 weeks or 3 months to build. That's going to waste a lot of time. What you want to start to do is build small little automations that you think are cool, that are helpful, that you would actually use. And then once you build that automation, you're also going to make content with it. So what I recommend is you take 2 to 3 days to build your prototype. And then once you have built it, then go ahead and make content showing people what it is and how it works, and even how to build it themselves. Now you might say, well, why am I going to show them how? Because then I'm basically showing them how to build my product. And that is true, but this is just a prototype, right? So this initial stage here is not to scale to $5,000 for a single product. What we're trying to do here is just to see and test if people are even interested in this idea. Because the single most important thing that you want to prove is that you can come up with an idea, show people that idea, and then get them to take some sort of action. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to, 1, come up with an automation idea. It's going to take 2 to 3 days to build. 2, you're going to create content. You're going to spend a day creating content on what you built and how you built it and show everybody how cool it is. Then 3, you're going to take that content and you're going to publish it to TikTok, and you're going to publish it to YouTube, and you're going to redirect people to using your link to a simple school community, okay? And this school community is going to be for people that are interested in the niche that you're working with. So if you pick the money-making niche, they're obviously building a business or doing something around that, and your sub-niche, right? So you're trying to find people that are interested in making money, they're interested in learning how to do that with content, and they're also interested in how to do that with AI automation. So now we have this other triangle here. It's people that want money, they want to do it with content or whatever sub-niche you picked, and they're also interested in AI automation. So this is what your community is about. And you're just pulling people into this community so that you can get to know them and nurture them and figure out what you actually should build. Okay. So this is a very simple funnel. And then you're just going to repeat this process every week and get really good at it. And then you're going to take all of the templates that you build and you're going to put those in the school community. So this is a very simple system. And then in the classroom, you're going to have all of these templates. So that's the reason why someone would want to join. So in your videos, you can say, hey, if you enjoyed this video and you want access to these templates for free, click on the link and join my school community and you'll get access to them. And you can always change this. You can start to charge for it at any time. But I can promise you, whatever you built in just 2 to 3 days isn't going to be so revolutionary that you shouldn't give it away. The more you give away, the more likely it is that your videos are going to do well. So if you make a good video and 10,000 people see it, that's 10,000 potential customers, right? If you make a subpar video that no one sees because you're afraid to show people how to do things, and 100 people see it, not only do they not think you're the expert because they couldn't really see how you built it, but it's only 100 people. So you have a much smaller volume of people to attract and get to know, because what you want is people in your school community engaging, asking you questions where you can start to build a dialogue. And then you can really start to learn more and more about what you should actually build, because in the beginning, you're kind of guessing. You're thinking about what would I like, and you're just trying to see if that would work. And then inside the community, you can have a call once a week. You don't have to have that. Definitely would be something where you could get to know people. A lot of the times people are afraid to have this because they're afraid to give away too much value. But in reality, this call is just as valuable to you as well, because you get to talk to people, you get to ask them questions, you get to see why they're there, you get to see what they're interested in. You can come up with product ideas. So just because you're having a free call doesn't mean that it's not valuable to you as well. Don't underestimate the power of talking with people and getting people into a community and having an engaged group of people to help you build a product. Because at any moment you can switch and you can start charging for these templates. Inside the classroom, you could have paid templates. You could have ones that are a little bit more robust. You can start off with a $99 product, whatever that is. You can change how you're doing things at any time. But what you first need to prove is that you can create content, and then you can get people to take an action, join a school community. And once you've proven this, you know that you're on the right track. And if you can't get this to work, then it's very easy to diagnose what's wrong. It's either the idea, the things that you're building, or the credibility behind it. Maybe you're not showing enough of your thought process for people to believe you, but you don't have a lot to think through and figure out what's wrong. It's just the idea or the content isn't working. It's not compelling enough to get someone to join a free school site where they can get access to those things. So now after you've proven this concept and you're able to get people to join your free school, then you can move on to the next step where you start to design something that might be a little bit more expensive. And what I recommend is starting to gather all that feedback and that interest from people and starting to build out something that is in the $997 to the $997 price range. And it's usually going to include not only the automations and how to set them up, but it's also going to include coaching on how to maximize the automations. Because the automations alone, unless they're mind-blowing, people tend not to value templates, right? They think you built it, you just got a couple of templates that they can download and install. And you'll get that sense as well. Like a template is not that valuable. If you are coaching somebody because you're an expert in something and you're helping maximize those automations, that becomes a lot more valuable than just a template that somebody can get access to. So it's going to come with coaching and some sort of weekly call where people can interact with you and you can help them. Because remember, whatever niche you pick and whatever you are building, you want to be using this same tool so that you have credibility. If you're creating content creation tools, you want to be using those tools and refining them and making them better so they work for you, so that you are starting to gain expertise in this topic. The expertise is what gives you credibility for people to purchase. Yeah, people are interested in AI automations, but they ultimately want to know that they work. They don't want a template. They want a working template. People find my automation more credible because I have a YouTube channel, because I create a lot of content, because I do the things that I'm saying that I'm going to help you do. Getting to 100 pieces of content per week is more than just installing a system. You have to have a way of thinking. You have to have a team. You have to put these pieces together in order to achieve the result. Now, this whole product can still be sold within the free school. So you don't have to create like a subscription site yet. And you can do it a couple different ways. You can just have a paid course inside of school. So you can just create a course in there and you can put a price on it. Or you can do it the way I did it, which is a little bit more complex, but it allows me to customize the sales page a bit more, is you link to an external platform like this, where people can learn about the product, they can purchase it, and then using the automations, you can give them access automatically. And don't forget that you can use your own classroom to actually sell the products and give information about them. You can have your testimonials. You can actually use your classroom to sell the product, lead into either the external landing page or directing people to the course inside of your school community where they can purchase. Or you can lead them to one of the paid courses where someone can just actually pay for the course through school. You can click buy now. You can put a one-time purchase price and allow them to purchase right through school. The reason why you might want to use an external landing page is just because you can control the experience. You can put a lot more information, all the testimonials, and you can just put a lot more information than you will be able to put inside school. And then what I recommend is once you've sold 20 to 50 of these lower ticket items and you've learned a bunch about what people want, what they don't want, you've gained a bunch of experience, then you can work on that next product that is at the 5K range. And now keep in mind that this is all just a best practice. This isn't necessarily something that you have to follow. And if you're interested in getting advice from me on one of the calls here, feel free to jump into the No Code Architects. And this is really that third stage that I was talking about, where you are selling this without a sales call. You've refined that sales process. You refined this sales page. All of your content is very powerful and it allows people to fully understand and buy into the program without actually even talking to you. All right, now next, I just want to talk about the 4 limiting beliefs that you're going to run up against as you go through this process. And they're going to seem really obvious once I tell you, but number 1 is a tech obsession. So if you're anything like me, you enjoy technology and you think that having as many features and having as many flashy automations as possible is the thing that you need in order to convince somebody to spend money. But that is not the truth. Of course, the AI automation is the mechanism that allows people to see themselves benefiting from this. It's providing some sort of value, but don't get so obsessed with the technology that you keep adding so many features that you make it complicated for the user to actually use. And this is the trap that I fell into. I kept making the product more and more complicated without the ability to explain in a very simple way how they can use it. Now, over time, once you learn how people use the system and where they struggle, you will be able to add more features and make it more complex and more powerful. But if you do too much too early, you run the risk of making it hard to install, hard to use, confusing, and maybe some of these features aren't even things that people really want. So one of the things that I learned was that even though the content engine database does all of these really cool things, the most important thing that it did, besides creating all this content and generating content, is that it just simply helped you get organized. Because if you're organized, then your team can function really well. And my ideal client was creating a lot of content. They had a team and they were suffering from all of the pains that come from having all of this little detailed work and a team. So once they were organized, I could help them get links to the content. They didn't have to search around for things. There was a status associated with each piece of content, so everybody knew where things were, and we could do notifications. So when we're in the age of AI, we think, oh, we need to do all of this stuff to convince someone that it's worth it, when in reality, what we need to know is what's the true pain point that people actually have, and let's solve that. Let's get people in love with the product because it solves that major pain point, and then they actually like it, they use it, they're successful, and then you can come back and scale in all of the cool features in later. But one of the biggest downfalls of my original product was it's too complex, and then that caused people not to actually use it. And that really leads into the second limiting belief, which was that this wasn't going to work at all. You know, every time I had an automation that no one was interested in, or I made something too complex and they told me they didn't like it, I just started to have this feeling all the time that this just wasn't going to work. And that's not true at all. The thing that you have to keep in mind is that every product is not as good as it could be, no matter when you release it. And the fact that you have people even using it is a sign that you are on the right track. Nobody's going to waste their time on something if they don't see some value in it. Now, they might use it and realize that, oh, it's not right for them, or it's not exactly what they needed, but it's that feedback that is super critical for you actually to improve it. So what I want you to remember is that it might not work now as it is, but if you keep pushing out new updates and you keep testing things, you're going to fall on the magic combination that allows you to scale this out. There were several times where when I was so focused on the tech and people were failing and the product wasn't working that I almost gave up because I thought it wouldn't work. But I just had to have the wherewithal to simplify things and make it easier for people so that they were more successful with it. And that's when I really started to unlock the money because people wanted it. I just hadn't built it in a way that actually functioned for them. So when you feel resistance, that's actually the sign that you're on the right track. The next limiting belief, if you get past that second stage where you actually have people working on this, is feeling like you've figured it out. So there were a lot of times when I had gotten past this stage and I had people using this that I got a little overconfident and I thought I had figured everything out. I thought I had a product that was perfect and I started to get distracted. I started to offer other things, right? So when people were using this system, the technical system, they often asked me, oh, do you have a video editor? Do you have somebody that can do graphics? Do you have this or that? And so I got distracted thinking that I had finalized this product and that I had maximized the value. And I started this whole other service where I was trying to hire and place these content people into people's teams. And it was a really great idea because people were asking for it. But the problem is that as soon as I started to do this, I realized how hard it was. Creating a single product is incredibly hard, even just one product. And so you want to make sure when you start to feel like you've figured it out, you realize that it's not that you figured it out, you're just at a plateau. You're not quite sure what to do next. So you stop innovating. And then here's where you start to get bored and you start to think of other ideas. And so when I started to offer this, somebody purchased it. And then this was really hard to execute. It's not easy to hire people and get them integrated into a team. And so this wasn't working at all. In fact, I took happy customers and then made them unhappy. And then I took my eye off the ball. And then this product was no longer being innovated anymore. So by releasing a second product, I was literally making customers unhappy and killing my working product at the same time. So make sure that as you start to get traction, that you keep focused on that one product, you keep making it better and better and better. You make the marketing better, you make the product better, and you charge more and more for it. And you scale this before you start to think of anything else that you're going to offer. And the fourth limiting belief is really just thinking that your product has to do everything. It has to serve all types of people. And it's just not true. Recently, it was interesting. I found this product online. All it does is help people write LinkedIn content. And it's way more simple than my content engine. All it does is you come into it, you put in a topic that you want to write, and then you tell it what template to use. And then it uses that to spit out a piece of content that someone can cut and paste and publish directly to LinkedIn. So the thing that's interesting about this is that what they realize is that there's a lot of people on LinkedIn that want text posts. That's all they really want. They don't want to scale to 100 pieces of content a week, which is much more complicated. And they found a whole niche. And just doing this one simple thing, they were able to scale their business to 100K a month with this one simple product that you might say, oh, I could build that in a weekend. Now, if you're interested in getting access to all these automations and being able to walk through this course and literally open it up and look through it and see how every little piece was put together, the program agreement, the onboarding sequence, plus support calls so I can help you implement this process, make sure to jump into the No Code Architects. It's an engaged group. And we also promise to solve 100% of all of our members' tech issues. I'd love to see you inside the community. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you on the next one.